Good morning, everyone. Oh, hello. What a joy to see you. My name is Martha Durkee Newman, and I have the delight of serving as your Director of Religious Education. This is the part of the service that is especially designed with our children and young people in mind. So children, young people, if you want to, you can come up here and sit right here with me. Hello, Phoebe. Thank you so much. Maybe some others will join you. Hazel, do you want to come sit right here? And we will share a story together. All right. Good morning. Hello. All right. So tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Phoebe and I were talking about this earlier. Maybe you're learning about him in school. But today, I'm going to tell you a story about one of our Unitarian Universalist ancestors and her struggle alongside Martin Luther King Jr. in spirit many years before. So this is a time in our calendar where we pause and we think about racial justice, our ancestors, and the righteous anger that many of them felt. That kind of anger that bubbles up inside of us when something is wrong. So we're going to talk today about Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, someone with 4 names, like me. I love people with 4 names. So once upon a time in Maryland, in the year 1825, very, very long time ago. You've been to Maryland before, right? Yeah. Slavery was still legal, and a little girl named Frances was born. Frances was born free, and she went to school, and her most favorite thing in the world was to read. She read and she read and she read. And when she was a young person, she worked for a Quaker family, and they had a bookstore. And she read every book she could possibly read. She loved to write, and even as a young person, she wrote poems and essays. When she grew up, she moved to a city called Philadelphia, and she used to take the streetcar in Philadelphia. One day, she got onto the streetcar and she sat down in her seat, and the conductor came over to her and he said, "You have to get off the streetcar." But she stayed quietly in her seat. Another woman came over and said, maybe she could sit in the corner, but Frances said, "No, I am sitting right here in my seat." She rode all the way to her stop, and when it was time to get off, she went and tried to hand the conductor her fare to pay for the streetcar, and he refused. So she threw it down on the ground and she got off the streetcar. She was being treated differently because she was Black. And her anger inside helped her to see that this was wrong and why this was happening. After this happened, she met many friends in Philadelphia who were part of something called the Underground Railroad. This was a network of friends whose homes were safe places for people who were escaping slavery and coming into the North, where hopefully they could be more safe. One of her friends, William Still, had a home, and she would sit there and she would listen to people telling their stories of slavery and how they had escaped. These stories were really horrible, and they made her very, very mad about what was happening to her friends and to her neighbors. And that anger that she felt inspired her to write more and more and more. She started writing more poems and essays. She started giving up and giving big, grand speeches, and she was an amazing speaker. So people used to travel from far and wide to come and hear her speeches about why it's important to work together against slavery. One day, because she was such an amazing speaker, she was invited to speak at the 11th Annual Women's Rights Convention. This was in 1866. This was a group of mostly white women who were advocating for women's rights to vote. Now, they new folks had just arrived in the community, Black people who had newly been freed, and they were fighting for their rights to vote too. But the women were only advocating for their rights, and this made Frances very angry. She knew that that anger she felt was telling her something, that something wasn't right. So she got up in front of the conference to give her speech, and she said, "We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity." She explained how when some of us are not free, it means that none of us are free. And it's important that we work side by side together for freedom for all of us together. She explained that we are stronger and we are more united when we have one another's backs. The women at this conference were so inspired by her fire and her passion and her dedication for justice that they voted to form a new organization, the American Equal Rights Association, that advocated for women's and Black people's rights to vote. Frances was also a member of the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia. She belonged to a community of people that were working together when they felt that kind of anger, that anger that's telling us something isn't right here. They worked together to make it better. So this weekend, when we're thinking of many of our ancestors in the struggle for racial justice and freedom, we think of Frances Ellen Watkins Harper and her fight in our movement a very long time ago. All right. So now I invite any children who want to depart with me through those doors for a children's chapel lesson. We're going to be talking about righteous anger. What do we do when we feel it? How we know it's righteous, and doing some crafts about our anger. You are welcome to depart with me through those doors.